Okay, this question says to graph y equals x squared, then apply the transformations to sketch the transformed graph. In this example, I'm only looking at stretches and compressions. I'm not translating it left or right. So I'm going to start off by graphing my original y equals x squared graph. So -2, 4, -1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 4. Okay, so this transformation tells us that A is 3. So if I think about where A falls in this number line over here, 3 is in the yellow zone, which means it's a stretch. So I'm going to say stretch by a factor of 3. Okay, so that means my x values don't change. What I'm stretching is the y values. So I am taking every y value and I'm multiplying it by 3, starting from here. Here my y value is 4, so I'm going to stretch it. Instead of 4, I'm going to multiply it by 3. So 4 times 3 is 12. So this dot right here, instead of being at 4, it is actually going to be up here at 12. The x value doesn't change. So it's almost like we're multiplying this whole column by our factor, which is 3. So AY, I'm going to multiply this by 3 and I get 12. Multiply this by 3 and I get 3. So 1 times 3 is 3, so this is where my new coordinate goes. My x values don't change. 0 times 3 is just 0. So this is going to stay where it is. 1 times 3 is 3. And 4 times 3 is 12. And it's still symmetrical. It's just I've taken all of the y values and I've increased them by multiplying them by 3. So when I connect the dots, this is what we mean by stretch. Do you see how it's stretched out like this and made thinner going up this way? And that's it. That's how you do a stretch. Okay, next example. Y equals -0.5x squared. So I'm going to start off by listing the transformations. I see that my A is equal to -0.5, which means two things are happening. For starters, I notice that my A is negative, which means it's going to open down, which means it's a reflection across the x-axis. So it's going to go like this. And I notice that it's 0.5, and 0.5 on this number line here is in the red zone, so it's a compression because it's between 0 and -1. So I'm going to say compression by a factor of 0.5. Okay, so I could either do the reflection first or the compression. The order doesn't really matter. I'm going to start off by graphing the original y equals x squared graph. And this one, I decided to draw it a little bit wider. I skipped every 2 boxes was 1 unit because I wanted you to see what was happening. So it's going to be a little bit of a larger graph. 1, 1. Okay, so this is my original y equals x squared. So you can do the compression or the reflection. The order doesn't really matter. I'm going to do the compression first. I'm compressing it by a factor of 0.5. That's kind of like in the previous one. I've multiplied all my y values by 0.5. So I'm going to multiply this by 0.5. Okay, so when I multiply 4 by 0.5, that gives me 2. So instead of being at 4, it's actually going to come down and be at 2. 1 times 0.5 is 0.5. So this 1 here it's not going to have a y value of 1, it's going to have a y value of 0.5. 0 times 0.5 is just 0, so it's going to stay in the same spot. 1 times 0.5, you'll notice the numbers are now repeating. And then 4 times 0.5. So instead of being at 4, I'm going to come down and it's going to be at 2. And I'm going to connect it into a curve. Now notice the difference between this compression. Now it is now compressed out that way versus the first example when it was stretched and made narrower than the original graph. So this is a compression, this is a stretch. Okay, now I'm going to reflect it across the x-axis. So what that means is I am going to take each of my points and I'm going to reflect them onto the other side. In order to know, you can almost picture it like it's flipped this way. It's being mirrored onto the other side. In order to know where to put it, I'm going to see how far this point is from the x-axis. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from the x-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4 units. I'm going to have to bring it that many units across on the other side. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This one is 1 unit away from the x-axis, so I'm going to bring it down 1. This one doesn't go anywhere. If it's being reflected on the x-axis and that's where it's lying, it's just going to stay the same. It's on the mirror line. This is 1 unit away from the x-axis, so it's going to go 1 unit down. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4 up, so I'm going to go 4 down. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how I made my scale a little bit bigger, so 4 units is actually only 2, but I'm just counting my grid lines. Okay, so this is my reflected graph. Okay, so I've done my reflection, I've done my compression, I'm done. This is my transformed graph. Y is equal to negative 0.5 x squared.